All right, let's talk about Transformers Rise of the Beast, directed by Steven Caple Jr. This is technically the seventh film in this franchise, but it's acting as a reboot. This takes place in 1994, so we're, 7, 8 years after that Bumblebee movie that came out a few years ago. And looking at this film, I'm coming at it from a few different perspectives. When I look at this critically speaking, I do think there is a lot to pick apart with it. I think the writing here is a little bit tepid, although, to be fair, when we compare this to the Michael Bay films, for example, there is more of a seamlessness to the writing here in terms of who these characters are, where they stand, what's driving their motivations, getting us from A to B to C. It's not nearly as disjointed as what we got with the Bayformers. And say what you will about Michael Bay, he does not really care all that much about story and character and theme. And so Bayformers, from a writing and story perspective, is often disjointed and sometimes straight up baffling. That's really not the case here. We know where these characters stand. We know what's driving them. Is it a little bit trite? Yeah, certainly. There's really nothing new to this film. But in terms of the emotion of it, in terms of its themes on unity and trusting each other and togetherness and fighting as a team, I do think all of that comes through pretty seamlessly. Now, on the flip side of that coin, what is fascinating about Michael Bay's Transformers, especially with how cinema has evolved over the last 20 years, you can't deny the practicality and the pragmatism of Michael Bay's visual style. The man loves to blow up cars and buildings for real, and that is refreshing amongst the incessant CGI soup we get with today's blockbusters. And visually speaking, this does fall in form with the latter. There's really not much to distinct this film visually. Now, the robots and how they move and how they transform, that is certainly more seamless than what we got with Michael Bay. You can see the details and how they move and how they come apart and how they come together. There is more of a vivid clarity there. However, on the whole, it is more murky visually than what you got with Transformers. So it's a little bit of give and take there. And as a result, I think when you look at this film on the whole, it's fine. It's fine. I don't think it's anything bad. I don't think it's anything great either. I think there is a satisfying conclusion here if you walk into this film with that critical lens. Now, if I'm taking off those glasses and I'm putting on my 7-year-old self glasses, because I come into this movie as a massive fan of Transformers. When I was a little kid, I was obsessed with the comics and the animated series, and into the 90s with Beast Wars, which is what made me very excited for this film on an individual level. And I do think the film does a great job of delivering to the fandom, to people that have a long history and relationship with this franchise. Michael Bay wasn't as interested or concerned with Easter eggs and references and really showing reverence to the Transformers franchise. That's not why Paramount hired him back in the 2000s. Here, whether intentionally on Steven Caple Jr.'s part or his team or Paramount, whoever was driving those decisions, this has much more of a reverence to the fans and the history of this franchise. There's a lot of transformery nerdy stuff going on here that I really love, that really geeked me out. So if you're like me and you come into this franchise with that rich history, you're going to find yourself geeking out in places when certain lines are delivered or when they reference certain characters or certain things regarding the lore of Transformers. I had a lot of fun with this film in that regard. It certainly was amplified by the fact that I brought my 7-year-old son to watch this with me. So I was like a child in the theater watching this again with my own son. So there was a little bit of poetry and irony there. So yeah, as a fan of this franchise, I had fun. I really did enjoy it. And I think a lot of people will enjoy it if you're a fan of the franchise. If you come in a little bit more blind in that regard, and especially if you come in with a critical lens, then yeah, you're certainly going to walk away perhaps a little bit more disappointed, or just finding this to be another tepid blockbuster with CGI soup driving the visuals. And I do think that's a fair perspective. Again, I think that is perfectly fair. I do agree with a lot of that perspective when I come in it from that angle. I do want to take a quick second here to talk about the performances here, because I do think, regardless of how you look at the film, the performances here, I do think add something to the movie. Anthony Ramos as Noah Diaz here, this ex-military electronics expert. I think he injects an earnestness to his character that has certainly been missing in at least the Bayformer films. I think Haley Steinfeld was great in Bumblebee. And while Ramos doesn't quite reach that level here, I do think that he is very good. Same thing with Dominique Fishback. I think she's wonderful, and they have some great chemistry here. Peter Cullen as Optimus Prime, he's a legend. He's one of the GOATs in terms of voice animated actors, and I love him here. And what I especially love about the writing of the character and how that couples with Peter Cullen is that they make Optimus Prime this flawed hero. He's a little bit blinded by this brotherly or fatherly instinct to take care of his Autobots and want to get home. And he'll do that at all costs, regardless of the consequences. And how that juxtaposes yet simultaneously parallels the Noah character, I do think is really great. And that does render this incredible conclusion that we do get at the end, that as a fan and as a critic, I do think it works from both perspectives. Bumblebee, great character. The way they maneuver him here, I'll be vague because I don't want to give away spoilers, but it's really great. It's really fantastic. I love how they utilize Bumblebee here. And then there's Mirage, voiced by Pete Davidson. And I know he's hit or miss with many people. I think he's really great as Mirage. He injects a lot of fun, a lot of vigor into this film, and honestly disappears into this role. If you don't know that it's Pete Davidson, I don't think that you'll be distracted or that will come to mind to you at all. He really does a great job of immersing himself into this role, and I'm sure the sound mixing helps with that as well. But you don't really notice him, and that character is a lot of fun here, and I love the dynamic he has with the Noah character. It's really fantastic. The utilization of the Beast Wars, the maximal characters here, I think is also very good, perhaps underutilized a little bit, but given where this film ends, it's possible that we see them more in the future, and I certainly hope that is the case. But the inclusion of the Maximals here, overall for me, satisfying. I really did enjoy that a lot, and obviously that is a big part of the marketing and the story here. So again, on the whole, I do understand the criticisms lofted at this film. I don't necessarily disagree with a lot of them, but I do think there is a seamlessness to the story. There's an earnestness to it that should not be overlooked. I do think that matters here. That's part of what made Bumblebee so charming, and it's what makes this film very satisfying in the end as well. And again, as a nerd of Transformers, the film delivers. I do think it very much delivers the goods, and I had a great time. And not just in terms of looking back at Transformers itself, in terms of some references to Michael Bay's films, I think there's some really great stuff here as well. A couple of lines of dialogue, and I don't want to give away the context. I'll be vague here, but musically, yeah, there's one moment that got me. It got me very, very good, and I quite loved it. So anyway, that is my review of Transformers Rise of the Beast. If you go and see it, let me know your thoughts. Let me know if you agree or disagree with anything that I had to say here. This is our first go around with these video reviews, so any feedback is certainly appreciated. I'm sure these will evolve as we go. But thanks for watching, and we'll see you when class is in session for the next movie.